There we go. Jackie, how are you?
Leon, I'm great. Thank you for having me on. It is so nice to meet you, right? Online. Yay, I'm so happy to be here.
E-meet. Have you seen that phrase when people say it's good to e-meet you?
No, I have not. And I love that. Now I'll use that. It's good to
Yeah.
e-meet you. I love that. Oh my gosh.
Electronically meet you.
Of course. Makes perfect sense.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure looking into your teachings and your beautiful website and listening to your podcasts on the site and familiar with your stuff that you've done with Bruce, who I believe you are metaphorically connected to with a kind of ring on a virtual ring.
A virtual, he's like my podcast Course in Miracles hubby in a way because I we've done so many things together over the years and we just have a nice banter and connection. People comment on it, they email me about it all the time. When are you doing a podcast with Bruce? When are you doing? It's just fun. Yeah. So
So I'm
great guy.
interested to know how you found the course, as I don't actually know that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I in the 90s, um, I started going through, which is a popular term, the spiritual buffet line. And I was just reading, anything I could get my hands on. And it was, Shakti Gawain and Wayne Dyer and
Mm.
Deepak Chopra, just so many that are escaping me now. But I was kind of reading, all this stuff. And I would go to a bookstore that was called Bookstar here in Los Angeles. It's not in that location anymore. And I would see this big blue book and I would kind of pull it off the shelf, look at it, put it back on the shelf, get something else, right? Um, and so I saw this book next to the big blue course book, and it was a small book by a woman named Karen Casey. Never met her in person, but it was 365 lessons on A Course in Miracles or something, like one for each day. It was a beautiful little book. Looked less intimidating to me. So I pulled that off the shelf. And I write about that in my first book about how I recognized right away the two thought systems, the way she was just gently laying it out, almost like a little calendar book. It was a thing for each day or whatever. And with the Holy Spirit, this is kind of the experience you'll get. With the ego, this is the experience, in a very
Gotcha.
gentle way.
Gotcha.
And right away, I just recognized it. So I bought A Course in Miracles. I went back and bought it and just I recognized it. That's the best thing I can say. Growing up, I was aware of kind of two, it's easy to put it in these course words now, although I didn't know it then, but I was aware of these two thought systems in my mind. I was aware of going and sitting in church, and the Jesus that was talked about often, not always, was different than what was presenting to me in my mind.
Mm.
And when I saw the course and I was starting to unpack all that, it just was so familiar to me. I was like, yep, this is it for me. And in 1999, I really started practicing it. And then I'm skipping, it's for the purposes of the podcast, So then my mother had been in Course in Miracles groups in the early 2000s in an area called Pacific Palisades here in Los Angeles. On the coffee table of one of the course groups she was attending was this book called The Disappearance of the Universe. And so she brought The Disappearance of the Universe home, and she just looked at me because we would be discussing the course and just doing stuff. And oh my gosh, and she'd say, "This is what you've been saying." And
Ah,
what she meant by that was I kept saying in these early years, I'm like, I just can't put my finger on it. but I know this is not our home. Like the courses, I know something's not right with the world. I just couldn't fully grasp yet, like the dreaming nature and everything. And so then when I read Disappearance of the Universe, I said, oh my God, it was just the last piece for me to put together.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. And that's why I think she was saying, this is what you've been expressing to me. This world is not our home, all that type of thing. And we didn't know Gary at the time. It was just a book. Like we didn't know anything. But all of us would kind of, my mom and sister and I would look kind of at the back cover of the photo and just kind of, almost like you know him,
Yeah.
And I didn't do that with other people. Like look at the back photo, there's nothing wrong with other people, but I didn't look at the photo and go, Anyway, and you just go on with your day. So obviously that there's a part in my mind, our minds that knew something was to come, although we wouldn't process it that way. So anyway, so that was kind of my journey with it. And then after reading DU, that led me deep to Ken Wapnick. And then I was just off and running for the rest of my life, kind of just really immersing myself in it. And that's the short, the version.
I love that. So did your mum
Yeah.
read The Disappearance then?
Oh,
Or
yes,
be
several
able
times.
to, in that early stage, to be able to say to you, this is what you've been saying? Was that based
Yeah,
on her just speed reading it, or she read the whole book and said, this is what you've been saying?
that's a great question. I believe she read the book first
Yeah.
and then gave it to my sister and I don't know in what order or how she did that at that time. But I believe that she read it first because she said, this is what you've been saying. And then I read it. And then I remember starting to discuss the course in a deeper way. And she's like, oh, we should go see this guy, Ken Wapnick. And so we went to Temecula, and it's only an hour and a half from here. And it just led from there. So that's a really good question. I don't remember exactly the detail, but I think she did read it. And then we would talk about it afterwards. Yeah. So.
Goodness me, I wonder how many mums there are in the illusory world who are able to give that gift to their daughters of like a deeper
Right.
understanding of the course.
It's been a wild path that I don't know. This doesn't mean anything. It's not better or worse than anything else, but I find it interesting that my mother, my sister, my brother-in-law, me, my husband, Mark, his mother, all practiced the course. His mother, way before I met them, way before my mother-in-law had been practicing it forever. It's just wild. And Leon, I have clients that have said to me, oh, this was on my mother's shelf or whatever. And she presented this to me or whatever. So there are people out there, and I had been doing sessions with people for 16 years, and you do come across the family members sharing the book. So it's interesting. Yeah. I love it when people share their stories with me, when I'm doing sessions with them of how they found the course. All my clients are not course clients, but a ton of them are, just because I'm in that community circle, the course community. But yeah, I have clients all over the spectrum. Yeah.
And then I suppose on the flip side, we've got Judy and Tam. And probably Tam was like, I don't want to read that book. And then she ended up being the president.
Isn't she hilarious? I love her. She's quick-witted, her humor, we just did a podcast with them, a webinar Q&A, my sister and I, with Dove Fishman and Scott Grace. It was really fun, separate from Miracle Voices that I've done. We did this thing just recently. What a kick that was. And she's so fun. And that's right. She was she has so many stories with her and her mother and that dynamic and everything that she tells so well. It's really wonderful. Yeah. She's It's really fun to hear those stories, the family dynamics. It has nothing to do with if you're a course student or not, meaning everybody has their family dynamics. It's so funny. Yeah.
Beautiful. But like we were saying prior to pressing record, I think, lots of us are drawn to just the universal experiential application. This is a practice. This is something to put into practice. It's like we learn the theory, we study the text, we get the ideas, we input the program into our minds, and then the classroom is where we get to measure how well it's sort of affecting our peace and our understanding, and our involvement. And that's one thing that really singles it out, because I've shared with people before that during my similar phase as you described, the spiritual buffet, I kept looking at my mum's books in her collection. Every time I read that killer line that basically, said, study this or nothing else. If you don't read this, you don't get in, and no one else is coming unless they've got this book. And it was just seems so primitive, and it was just like, I
Sure.
can't, I'm looking, and I realized I was looking for the all-inclusive, all-encompassing nature of the Course in Miracles when it says, what's all-encompassing has got no opposite. And I was like, that's what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
And, and then with that also, it's going to say to you, forget this course. You don't get that in any other system, as far as I'm aware, where they say, right, forget this, move on, go and live.
Yes. Beautifully said, all of that, Leon, because it is you learn the theory, you have to kind of learn what you're practicing and why you're practicing that way and what true forgiveness is, but it's the practice, it's the practical application that has made the teaching, the integration of that, using the life as a classroom, the practical applications of what you're, that's where it is. That's where everything is. It's the practice. And what has changed for me over the years is not that there aren't triggers, upsets, and grievances,
Yeah.
but I just stay in it less. There's such an observer mode, that awareness of dreaming that's just there in the backdrop all the time, and it's easier to get back than in the early years. And that's because as the mind is healed, as we're removing the belief that we're guilty, that we've sinned and we're going to be punished, right? The more we strengthen the right mind, gosh, I'm innocent, the miracle is showing me who the dreamer is. That's me. None of this out here is real. That's so weird. I put it there and then I'm reacting to it and punishing at myself as if it's coming at me. And when you really unpack that, it makes life a lot simpler. It's not like easy always to practice it, but it's so simple when you remember that, because I find it so empowering to take responsibility, right? We don't do it not as the body, Jackie. I mean, it starts out that way, but as the one mind that's projecting this dream, you take responsibility and recognize the power of your mind is so vast that I can choose to see this differently. It says it throughout the course. Everybody knows that. When you really say, is that possible? Can I, it feels like I'm but denying this or that. Once you get past feeling guilty for not feeling guilty, and then it's a lot easier to let that extension of love, that reflection, that's through our Holy Spirit mind, flow into everything you do, direct all your functioning. There's no effort in that. The ego, there's effort. Holy Spirit, it's just flow. And then your thoughts, your actions in the world, you'll just be watching the body do its thing. With sometimes the body's very busy, sometimes the body's not busy, sometimes the body's upset and triggered, sometimes the body's happy, and it's almost like the quiet center stays there. And I just don't know any other way to operate. And when I was younger, I didn't understand. I thought everybody was watching, like, and I would observe things. Again, it's easy to say that in this context now. I wouldn't have used those words back then, but there was just always a part of me that was behind the eyes watching. Why did I do that? Why do people do that? Why is there so much conflict? I don't know if he knows that's probably not the best thing for him. Or, why did I do what I did? Oh, I can't believe not just, oh, I can't believe I said that. And you're in the ego and you're so, but really, like, wow, it's kind of weird. I don't really feel that way. Why did I have that thought? I don't really feel that way about that person. But you have, so it just was just a wild thing.
Love that.
So I find it comforting to be in that space. I kind of don't know how to not do it, be in that space. This by no means, I'm not at the end of the line. I got a lot of forgiveness to do, and I slip into the ego modes. It's just that your right mind gets strengthened so much that it's just easier to be out of it. I just don't indulge the thoughts in the same way. And just when you're kind of aware of dreaming, everything's different because you can't even put the experience into words, or I can't. Some people might be able to. Things just flow through you. I guess it's, some people say, athletes are in the zone, or they just you're just the games are being played through you. I remember loving Michael Jordan, a very famous basketball player for the Chicago Bulls. Okay. And watching him score like 42 points with the flu and like doing all these things. And I'm paraphrasing him, but I remember I lived in Chicago for a short period for 3 of their championships. I was in Chicago and I was in Los Angeles for the second 3. This is way back in the 90s, but I just remember him saying something like, the game of basketball is being played through me. And I go, that's right. Just privately to myself, I was like, that's right. I feel like life is just, I just want to be helpful to people. That's it. I'm going to have my roles, my career, my family, it's great, but I just want to be helpful. I like that feeling of just letting the love extend in whatever, in situation A, this is the form that love takes, ego. Situation B, this is the form. And you're not deciding that. That's what's so freeing. I could never be a therapist for me if the ego is in there having to heal and be worried about saying the right thing. I give every session over. I tune into the higher self. It's everybody's holy higher self. And sure, sometimes we need a catalyst to help us, right? But I'm a symbol in your dream, in everybody's dream. And for a short period of time, that's helpful to people. So I'm in that role. But I know that I'm not separate from my clients. In the mind, that's how I'm thinking. I know we're all one and we're all teachers and students. And this is a role that I'm doing that I'm happy to do. But my premise is always that we're connected. If I connect to that love, that content of love, the words will just flow through. People say, oh, it's so helpful. I can't believe you said that. And I'm like, well, yes, I said it, but it's just coming from another place. The words are taking form that are helpful from knowing that darn well who's really doing the helping, which is getting the ego out of the way and just letting it flow through, So I love it because I feel the connection with everybody, the unity. If people really, when you just feel the connection, it takes away any, I don't know, whatever people would say, if you felt better than, you feel less than, you feel competitive, you feel I should do this, I should do that. It takes away everything. And you can just say, how can I just show up while I'm having this, believing I'm here as I'm awakening? How can I just show up and do my best That's it.
Do you know what's been in my mind for the last few days? I found myself, or maybe a week, one of the most um, recent sort of contemplations has been about what what could be a better reason to be in possession of something than to have the motivation to want to give it away.
Oh, beautiful. Beautifully said.
That's
Love
just
that.
been just going round and round. I was thinking, is there anything better than that? When that understanding is, it's pretty much come to mind because of how you're describing how everything becomes one equal playing field, and the differences are beautiful because they allow us to look at something from all these different angles, like a multifaceted jewel or something.
Yeah.
But every side of that jewel is equal to every other side. And when you position yourself, when you're looking at it as a neutral observer, then you're not invested. You're not thinking that jewel is you as such. You're recognizing your place on one of those sides of that jewel. And wherever you turn it, it's different, but it's equally beautiful in every light.
Wonderfully said. Yes, I love that. I
Mm.
love that. And that's true. I mean, many people use this analogy, I guess. I mean, if you have a thing of glass, a mirror, and you throw it down, it shatters and fragments, but it's
Mhm.
the mirror. It's still the same. It's got the same substance to it. We're in this hologram, right? This projection, or we believe we're in this hologram, but everything has the whole, and it's just fractured parts of our own mind that we see as separate people and things. So once you are, you know, cultivating the awareness that you're reintegrating split off parts of yourself back into the whole, recalling the projection, it makes you even more think, oh gosh, of course all my brothers and sisters are one. There's nobody out there but my projection. So I'm just recalling these things that are showing me the contents of my mind that still need to be healed. It's a pictorial representation, the course says, of
Beautiful.
my. So then that's to me how I interpret the course as saying that's you're shifting your perception from the
Mhm.
ego's separation, different bodies doing things to me, which that
Mhm.
is the ego's experience in the world, to looking past that. Jesus talks about Christ's vision, which is
Mm.
the body's eyes see the form. It's not like you're practicing the course and you don't see uh, the strife, but the difference is you remember where that's coming from. And when you see with true vision, you look past and you recognize, oh, this is just a pictorial representation rather of the attack thoughts, the sin, guilt, fear in my mind projecting out. And if I look with Christ's vision, that's how I'm healing the mind. That's how we're waking up. We accept the atonement. We accept the miracle of, oh my gosh, I'm dreaming. This is not what a miracle to recognize that all the things you thought about your sinful self. Yeah, bodies do bad things. Bodies do, but they do in your dreams at night in bed. You wake up, where's the dream? You can't go get it. Why? Because you made it up. And what then it disappears. You're like, you can't go in there and fix it. You're just like, you wake up and you go, oh my God, thank goodness. Or you wake up, you go, oh my gosh, I want that. Two sides of the same illusory coin, but you can't go in there because it never was there. You just made it up. So it's such a, I don't even have the words for it anymore after all these years. I find it just comforting to be able to be empowered and to share that empowerment with the
Mm.
split off parts of the self and
Mm.
have everybody reintegrate at their own pace, because again, there's nobody else. So we're going to experience people on different levels of awarenesses and whatever. What does that have to do with what's really going on, the peace in your mind? Nothing. Meet people where they are. Let them be,
Yeah.
The minute you want to change, something, you need the change, So I think one of the biggest things about integrating what metaphysically, and I get this question, is probably one of the most asked questions I get, is
Oh,
how do
wow.
you integrate that the world's an illusion with being practical here, right? And I will defer to Ken answering that beautifully,
Yeah.
which is always you're normal. You're not running around changing and trying to be spiritual. That's just feeding the ego. This is a very difficult one for people. They're like, yeah, but I'm making it real when I'm engaging in the world. No, you can't not engage in the world. You're normal, but the world becomes your classroom. There's a different purpose to it. And if we resist the world and say it's not spiritual, this, or, oh, I have to do forgiveness, I can't feel this way. Welcome, ego. Welcome back in. You wouldn't resist anything if you wouldn't believe it's real. You would just use the world as your classroom, have your fun, have your this, do this, have your crying, work on your lessons. You're just changing your internal teacher. You're just changing that will direct all the functioning. That will direct everything, So I just find it like I love that. I feel like the conversation, being here with you, talking, hearing your experiences, input, being able to share is just such a reflection. We have to join here. It's a reflection of the joining, kind of the remembering, of the ease of things. That's why I kind of still do it. I just feel to share the message. I don't feel a pressure to do it. I don't feel, oh, I got to go out there and share. It just is kind of something that I'm doing, and I just will do it until I don't do it, I guess. Whatever.
So the answer in Ken's experience, which you've taken on board, is to just be normal and to just know
Yes.
metaphysics whilst you're moving through the dream,
Yes.
knowing
We
it.
need to know that. Yes. Yeah. We need to know that, but you're normal in the sense to resist
Yeah.
something that's going on is giving the ego a power it doesn't have. This doesn't mean we don't want to solve our problems and everything, but there's only one problem. Yes, there is, and that gets reflected. But the love in your right mind, when you're in there, will let you intuitively know what would be best and what you're thinking is the world, right? What you progress within the course is that I'm losing myself. That'll be your choice. It feels that way sometimes, but think about what you're really losing
Mm.
is the guilt, the anxiety. You're undoing all that
Mm.
goes along with choosing the ego, right? But that seems daunting because it's a part of who we believe we are, And so I encourage people, if this is the path for them, it's not for everybody, certainly not for everybody, but if it is and it finds you, it's a beautiful path. So the metaphysics, you just change your internal teacher, and
Mm.
then you will intuitively know how to navigate the world, because what won't be present is all the guilt and the everything, right? And you'll just be able to flow into all your roles. So we don't have to give up anything. If we do, that would just be because it's in your script, but we can be in all our roles and be ego free.
Wow, beautiful.
Right?
And to not feel that desire for the savior complex to go and fix the world and put everything right, and get drawn into that thinking
Yeah.
that there's something outside of you to go and correct. And it's just like, step back, recognize those urges. You don't have to give yourself a hard time for if those things pass through your mind. They're quite natural. And
Right.
one of the notes that I had for today was something about, that phase when you feel so impassioned about the course's system and its language and what you've discovered. It's almost like let's change it to like, I've tried a fruit from a tropical island that I've never tried before. It's blown my mind. And so therefore, what am I going to want to do? I'm going to want to run around, Jackie, try this, papaya, whatever it is, and you'll be like, and then you're going to want to share. That's in your nature to want to share, but there has
Yeah.
to there has to be something in that sharing where you have like a neutrality to say, someone might go, Leon, that is the most horrible thing I've ever tasted in my life.
Right.
And you just go, okay, yeah, right.
Eh,
Can you
right.
recognize my intention though? I just, I wanted you to feel what I'm feeling through this. So,
Yeah, of course.
I made this sort of note about that of like, and how it says, forget this world, this course, come to God with wholly empty hands. And pretty much, interestingly, not surprisingly, what you've just explained in a non-linear way, the question's coming after the answer, because without mentioning A Course in Miracles, it's like sharing that passion and that understanding for it, and I've noticed it in myself since maybe, yeah, in the last year or so, when things have become a bit more social for me with my course journey, and
Mm-hmm.
the people that I rub up against, I've learned in that year outside of the course community how to express the learning without mentioning a course and without mentioning spirituality. And interestingly, my wife's just put a book out yesterday, and she's,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's a really beautiful book. And
Oh, congratulations to
thank
her.
you, yeah.
Tell us about it. Yeah.
Well, it's called What Would Love Say? And it's about the internal
Beautiful.
dialogue, and it's about love and fear. It's a course in miracles, but interestingly, she's saying this is a book about mental health with a spiritual slant. And that's only something we've talked
Oh,
about in the last couple of days. And I was like, that is such a great way of bypassing people's like, oh, someone said spiritual, and obviously we know we can make a distinction between spiritual and religious. For some people, spiritual means religious, which is like the business of spirituality, isn't it? It's like a middleman between me and God, or between you and God, is like. So I just thought that was a really gentle, sort of disarming, without making somebody feel like they'd had a shield or something taken from them. It's like, this is about mental health with a spiritual slant. And I
love
often
it.
feel grateful that I've come to the course without having to eradicate the symbols of religion. I know a lot of people come from a Christian background or from a
Mhm,
Catholic background or whatever
mhm,
mainstream
mhm,
religion, and then they almost have to redefine these words, don't they? Or almost forget. So you'll get some people who I can't think of salvation because it makes me think of the old model, whereas I
mm,
feel grateful that, my dad was big on the Bible. That was his book, but I didn't read the Bible and I didn't have that indoctrination. So Christ consciousness, unity consciousness, these things have got that malleability from the get-go for me to be able to go, okay,
mm,
what do you guys mean when you say that? And again, it's something that crops up quite a bit on the channel, is like, we should have an open forum to just be able to go, oh wow, that's interesting. So in the thing that we study, when we say the word forgiveness, it means this, instead of, a lot of these things are built on such weak foundations and on shaky ground that people can't have the open debate to just
mhm.
share symbols and share words without being invested in it, because there's fear involved in a lot of those systems, because otherwise, why, if you had a different definition to the word salvation than I did, why would that be a problem? It should be a point of interest, because ideas increase in strength when minds are joined. And like you said 5 or 10 minutes ago, the act of engaging with fellow course students, people who are passionate about the course, rarely leaves you without a fresh, like, oh wow, so you should relish it, really, shouldn't you?
Yes, there's so many excellent points in what you just shared. I don't know where to start to say that um, kindness, true kindness, would meet people where they are and be able to have an open dialogue. Or, oh, really, I know you grew up with that. I kind of did too. This is what kind of shifted for me. Or, that's just an example. But kindness would only meet people where they are and have a starting point with that. And again, your words would just flow, and you'd be able to have a dialogue, and without conflict or making someone else wrong, or whatever it is that people do. That the ego just cannot survive without judgment, and it's the belief in that is so big as we're undoing it, that it's almost impossible sometimes, not to judge and not to want to say, oh, but this is right or whatever. And it takes a huge awareness, which I'm noticing that you have, and just the way you conduct the interviews and the inclusivity with which you exude that, that can only come from the kindness, the true kindness in the right mind, which can be synonymous with love, in the sense it's not I'm being kind to you, which is nice, and the world's reinforcing separation, and we do want to have a reflection of that and be kind. But the Course's kindness is really letting that love, not seeing the differences at the level of the mind, and then letting your dialogue be reflected from that awareness, from that contact. So you would just join, where there would be no need to correct and this and that. And obviously differences would be, if someone asks for clarification of something, you would clarify in a sense of correction, but there wouldn't be a need to tell people how it is, or that would just be absent, and you would just be the representative of love, because there's nothing to prove. There's nothing to, again, I try my best to put things into words that I can't really put into words. It's just kind of a way of being, that you, without trying to get something, it's almost just, you're just giving, that you hit on earlier. Oh yeah, that was another one of your really good points. There's so many about wouldn't you want to just give and join? Oh yes. And you also said, the Course says ideas are strengthened when they're shared. So that means with you, that means with us, because there's only one that believes it's there. So that's coming back to you. These things are challenging, what we're talking about. I mean, this is a Course audience mainly that understands it, but it's challenging to do that. I think another thing my clients have brought up over the many years is it feels uncaring. When I'm looking at the world as an illusion, it feels uncaring, like I'm not engaging or whatever. And I get this a lot. And that is such a normal thing to feel sometimes, that you're, well, if it's an illusion, but look what's happening in the world. The world can be a disaster. We can all admit that, because it's based on a thought of disaster, that we're afraid, we feel we've attacked God. There's no world yet, just in the mind we're battling. in the mind, we're battling. The ego is like battling, God and everything. Well, when we want to escape this perceived wrath, we have to project that guilt out. Now we have a world. What do we see? Conflict everywhere, right? So as the mind gets healed, the body's eyes see conflict, but you just interpret it differently because it's just a pictorial representation of what's going on in your mind. You know that. So it's not that you don't care, because again, kindness coming from the right mind will behave appropriately in what the situation calls for. But this is everything's in the mind. This is a mind training, that you're thinking about things as they really are. That again directs the functioning. You're just from a different starting point. You're just changing your internal teacher. I have a lot of conversations with people. They call me up. They don't know anything about the course. I have a huge circle of friends. Oh my God, can you believe this is going on in the world? I say, it's just really, it's unbelievable. I respond to them at the level that they're talking to me.
Yeah.
That's just affect the kindness in your mind. In your mind that this is a dream, but they're in fear just like you're in fear. They might be in fear in something different. And I use they lightly.
Yeah.
But the contents of your mind are showing up in different forms of fear. So wouldn't you meet that with love and not try to increase more fear by telling someone who's not talking to you about that the world's an illusion at all? That doesn't come from kindness.
Yeah.
So you would just kind of meet them. And I do this all the time. So I have a wide circle of friends, lots of course people, but just for lack of a better word, normal people that I grew up with, family, friends. We're just meeting each other. Everybody's doing their own thing and their lessons. And so
isn't that interesting? Because again, that's like a follow-on from, the question that I'd written down about how to manage the kind passion to want to share it. That's actually what you're describing there. It's like, someone might say, "Oh God, that's terrible what's happened in the news." You don't turn around and go, "What are you on about, mate? It's like it's all a dream. This is pure abstraction. We're not even here."
right.
They look at you
Yeah,
horrified,
creates more fear.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
kindness is to find some way of acknowledging, like you said, meet them where they are. And also, I've got
Yeah.
some great notes of stuff that you've said about use our perception of conflict in the world, which is a reflection of a war in our mind, when we see what we don't want to see. Use that as a reason to remember the projector and heal the battle going on in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Which I found that to be really powerful, and something that you say, feeling the dream. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I'm really feeling the dream at the moment. I want to
Yes.
press the horn because that guy's just cutting in his car, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, it's feeling the dream. Something my sister and I have said for years, because you can't really put an awareness like that into words that do it justice. But we always, for some reason, I don't know how we even came up with it. She'd call me or I'd call her. We'd be like, "Oh my God, we're feeling the dream right now," meaning we know this is not where we really are. Like, there's a quote. I wonder if I could find it
Yeah,
really
let's
quick
do.
that kind of explains. I had it here because I'm going to do a post. Yeah, now I'm thinking of doing like posts on like Facebook and Instagram. It's wild. It's a whole new thing for me. But oh yes. So this is from the manual for teachers, number 12, how many teachers of God are needed to save the world.
Nice.
And this is paragraph 6. Awareness of dreaming is the real function of God's teachers. They watch the dream figures come and go, shift and change, suffer and die, yet they are not deceived by what they see. They recognize that to behold a dream figure as sick and separate is no more real than to regard it as healthy and beautiful. Unity alone is not a thing of dreams. And it is this God's teachers acknowledge as behind the dream, beyond all seeming, and yet surely theirs. Like that kind of explains the feeling of I experience, and everyone has their own experience. There's no right or wrong experience at all. Just to share mine, having that awareness as a backdrop, it's like a template all the time. I can't have it not be there. So after practicing the course for, I don't know, 20 some years or something, I default more to that. And I hear people say that it's just kind of easier to, this does not mean I don't have ways to go and forgiveness opportunities. I would have no idea where I am in the spectrum of that. But what I can tell you is that that's always there. And maybe something that would take a year takes 6 months. Something that would have taken 6 months takes a month. Sometimes something that takes a month takes 3 days. Something that's 3 days, 1 day, an instant. Often the forgiveness steps, you don't even have to like go over them. It's just an automatic thing. And that's why I love the quote from Martin Luther King Jr. It's in my first book, but I always miss a word or something. But forgiveness is not an occasional act. It's a consistent attitude. And yes, we start as acts. It doesn't mean we're not being normal and forgiving what we think is but it becomes a consistent attitude where you're recognizing what your brother and sister haven't done because it's coming from you. This is an advanced thing. We all know Course in Miracles is radical. Let's just say it based on how most of us or a lot of us grew up or whatever. So, but when you really think of that, of gosh, what my brother hasn't occurred, that means, wow, but I'm using that. It's the first step in forgiveness. I use my triggers, my upsets to come back to the mind and say, but wait a minute, I'm the projector projecting that, the second step. And then just letting the Holy Spirit's thought system replace the egos. And you go, oh, that's right. I remember now. I'm recognizing, I'm recognizing that, remembering that this is my dream. And that's really powerful. Doesn't mean you have to go running around changing your roles and telling people, yeah, our roles change in the dream. Sure. But I find it so helpful to change your internal teacher first. And you feel like you have to make a decision. Should I stay or leave this job? Should I stay or leave this relationship? Should I buy this car? It doesn't matter. We have so many things in the dream that come up. And if there's any indecision or trepidation, just remember, oh my gosh, you know what? The ego must be in charge and making it a little more emphasis, believing fine. There's no guilt in that. That's what bodies do. And then when we're ready, we can just go back and say, that's right. I'm going to change my internal teacher. I forgot what to decide right now. Let me bring it back to the fact that this is my projection. Okay, I'm really mad because I want to hold on to this grievance, and I can do that. I'm allowed to do it. I can keep myself from peace, but there is a part of my mind that knows when I'm ready that I can. Just an example of just being gentle with oneself. And we want to look. You gotta look, guys. You have to look, or else it stays there. It stays protected. But when you look with the Holy Spirit, that's what really, or Jesus, or whoever you're practicing with, it's all your higher self anyway. Those are symbols. But you look with your higher self, and that's what disarms everything. It feels fearful at first sometimes. But then once you get used to it and you realize you're not identified with the body, that you're watching this script, that you're like, oh my gosh, now I'm watching this. I got totally sucked in. Oh my gosh, I'm not judging myself for being sucked in. I'm going, oh my God, I got totally sucked in. Oh, I must be feeling bad about myself or a situation or something right now because I just went and it's their fault, you know. And bodies do things in the dream that are not right, that are not healthy. We need to address things, but who do you want to address that? Do you want to address that through the separation lens, or do you want to address that remembering, right? Let me shift first, and then I will intuitively know what the best thing to do. And what will be missing from all that? Conflict, the anxiety, the guilt, everything that comes along with the ego's script. I'm going to open my eyes and my life is still going to be there, but I've just changed my internal teacher and I have the choice for that. And I can do that at my own pace and in my own time, right?
Beautiful.
Just to be gentle with yourself, you know?
Beautiful. And also, you know, when you think about the undoing of what never was, in terms of like the definition of atonement and forgiveness, and I've forgiven my brother for what he never did, it's also like that. Let's say that that's an external application of those thoughts and principles. So let's now draw a curtain across the external world and just consider that within the mind, and to say the undoing of what never was. So one thing that I like to sort of stress, not stress in the word where we normally use the word stress, but sort of emphasize perhaps, would be that forgiveness is passive. Forgiveness is an inactivity that only makes sense, or only its definition is reliant upon its opposite, as with duality in general. You know, if there wasn't up and down, we couldn't communicate that to one another because we need the counterpoint as part of the definition. So when forgiveness is sits quietly, does nothing, and watches, doesn't invest. What it doesn't invest in is judgment, whereas judgment is an activity. Judgment is leaning in, it's making a series of evaluations and projections. So the undoing of what never was, to actually undo in your own mind that activity, you're describing something that is beyond definition. Like, there's no difference to saying that we don't talk about love in A Course in Miracles. We don't talk about what forever lies beyond words. Or when it says, you know, God is, we just say that and we merely cease to speak because there's not even any lips to say God is. So these things all fall into one category of like, they're not definable, they're not explainable, because they're just the one thing. There's a beautiful lyrics actually by U2, and they said they were singing over, there is no them, there's only us, there's only, and I was thinking, what, that like went in my mind. I was like, wow, that is so good. There is no them, there's only us. And it's that exact principle of, you know, these things we're saying we don't bother to define because they can't be defined. When duality isn't perceived, then that kind of gives you the platform to understand why we don't try to define them. Because why would you define forgiveness if judgment didn't exist? Because it's like you've been saying, it's just pure kindness that just comes through. And if kindness is the fundamental substrate to your motivation, then you can have debates with people about anything. You know, you can sit around a table with people from 10 different religions. And interestingly, going back to something Carol Howe brought up, which was about communication. And she said, you must know this with your psychology background and stuff, but she was explaining to me that 7% of communication is the words we use. The next 23% is the sound of our voice and the way we move our body and blah, blah, blah. And then 70% is the energy. And because we all have, like something Maureen Muldoon was saying, which was brilliant, is like we're all kind of clairsentient and clairaudient and clairvoyant. We
For
have
sure.
this sense, like you've been explaining beautifully, about connecting to that guidance. When we come from that lamp that lights the dream world up, we're aware of all of that stuff because that's our true language. That's the language, that's what we're feeling, that's the feedback that's coming back, that's the reflection on the mirror, is all of those things that we know and we feel, but without the interference to the awareness of love's eternal presence. None of that stuff even needs to be worded or named or explained because it just is.
Wonderfully said, and great points, Carol and Maureen. And yeah, I don't even have anything to say to that. You're right. It's just it's well said. And in the light of what you just shared, Leon, it almost I'm always at a loss for word. I mean, the course says words are symbols of symbols, you know, and it twice removed from reality. So my husband will tell you that he's always cracking up. I'm always like, I don't know quite how to word this, or like, I can't seem to pull in the words for this. I'm constantly saying it. So I don't even really have the words, except for the fact that what came to me as you were sharing is, when you know all this, doesn't it just seems like folly to argue with people or try to be right about what? Right about, you know what I mean? Why just everybody wants the same thing here, like to be loved, to remember who they are, whatever. If someone's finding that through their Buddhist teachings, wonderful. Wouldn't it be nice to learn about how they're connecting with themselves through the symbol of that? Or someone goes to the church every Sunday and finds a connection in that, the symbol of that for them, of the universal thing people are all seeking, and the mind is going to a comfortable form for that, right?
Yeah.
We have symbols here. Jesus is a symbol. He's a symbol of the right mind. He's, the higher you get up the ladder, you're like, well, there's not Jesus, there's no Jesus, it's me. I'm
Yeah.
Holy Spirit, you know. It's just, over the years, my higher self is doing the job that I used to outsource to symbols a lot.
Brilliant.
I'm not advocating to not outsource to symbols. And
So
I have angels all over my house, and I love Jesus, and I talk to him. What I'm saying is, there's just much more of a, there just isn't as much as the outsourcing, which, what you were saying, I almost, it's like, it's almost folly to be in, just join with what works for people, for them, and then you can stay with what works for you. And because A Course in Miracles is, it's not about a system of behavior, it's just about how you're thinking about a world that you made, that the one mind made, right? You're A Course in Miracles is helping us wake up from a dream that there is a world. So that's great. Why do we have to argue with the reflection and do things like that? You know, it just almost seems, you know, folly to me. But hearing those words in the wrong context, in the word, I can understand those things seem like, but don't you care? Can't you see what's?
yeah.
But it's beyond that. You are the ultimate caring, which you're remembering what the people in fear in your dream, that they're really calling for the love and the help, that has nothing to do with the effect of what that reminder will look like in the form of what you do. It's just a fact. So you're going to be helping and doing things. You're just coming from a different teacher,
That's
right?
beautiful. And I guess if we weren't talking about something as touchy as religions and spirituality, I think I've said before, like, if we were talking about a potato and there was a Buddhist and a Christian and a Muslim and a Hindu and a Jewish person and a Jainist and a Zionist and an atheist and we all
Right.
sat around the
On and
table
on.
and everybody had a different word for potato, could we not all just debate that without any emotional friction because it's just a potato?
It's just a potato. Yeah. How can we join in that? How can we, you know, I mean, I used to use this salad analogy. I don't know if I came up with it. It's probably out there in the ether somewhere, but it came into my mind years ago about you're at a salad bar and you're making your salad and you're putting blue cheese crumbles on and somebody else is putting cheddar. Them putting cheddar on their salad does not affect the taste of your salad. It doesn't matter if they're putting cheddar unless you make it matter. Like, oh, they're doing cheddar. Oh, it doesn't affect you unless so people are the world is made so that you disagree and everything. It's based on separation. So when we know that going in, you can just shift the focus to where you can join with people. And if you can't join with people, which we can't join in love bodies, the course isn't even talking about that. It's joining in the mind, remembering that the mind is one, fragmented out. So then the people that do cross your path, you can find there will be a way that you can join with them. And if there's not, you won't make a big deal about it. You would just kind of go on your way. Nothing has changed the love in your mind. We can't have everyone over to dinner. We can't have everyone, on a podcast. We can't do everything you can't do that. So it's just effect. So you can kind of navigate the dream by just looking for the unity. You're doing this again in the mind. We're not going to join as bodies and believe the same thing, right? It's just not the way the world works because it's based on separation. It's the opposite of unity in heaven. So when we kind of go in knowing that, why do we have to lead from the ego and reinforce the separation? This doesn't mean we disagree. My husband and I have to agree to disagree about several things. Is he a bad person because he grew up this way and he's used to seeing it through this one? I grew up this way and I'm used to seeing it. We find a common ground. It's called compromise. You're discussing, there's always going to be separation. If you let it, it'll take you. And if you don't, you can use it as the classroom that Jesus is teaching us in 1,300 pages to use it as your classroom. We're not going to special love everybody in form and connect with everybody, but that's not even what the course is talking about. It's just in your mind, thinking of them how they really are. Makes things really simple because then that directs your functioning and you're not deciding that as a person. What you do or say as the person you think you are. There's conflict there. Am I doing this? Am I doing there? Love flows easily. There's no effort in that. But it takes us a while to get there when we're in our we're in our triggers. It's like, why can't I get back to that when I feel like so it's a process. I'll speak for myself. It's a process, unfolding. There's still always work and forgiveness lessons to be done, but one moment at a time. That's all there is the present
alone.
moment.
Unity alone is not a thing of dreams.
Yes, right.
Well, I know you've got to cast your light this afternoon in various places in the illusory construct that we appear to be in at the moment. So
yes,
I'm very grateful for the time we've spent together. It's been really illuminating and really enjoyable. It's been a lovely conversation.
Oh, for me too. Thank you so much for reaching out. And this has been such a joy. I would love to do it again.
Yes,
And
please. Yeah.
I would love to do it again. I'd love to bring you on True Forgiveness Teachings and my audio podcast. Have have a nice discussion. So we'll do that. But this has just been a joy. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie. Have a lovely day.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much, Leon. Blessings.
Bye-bye.
Bye.